In this video, we're going to learn how to dynamically add routes in View Router based on user roles and update the navigation bar to match. Let's see it in action first. Here is what we're going to build. Right now, we're logged out. Notice that the navigation bar or the nav bar has just 3 links: Home, Blog Posts, and About. Now, let's log in as a VIP user. So here I'm going to click the first blog post, and this requires login. There's a role called VIP user, and here is the VIP user username, and this is the password. Let's click login. And as you can see that, now there is a 4th link in here, VIP exclusive. And only VIP users can see this link and access this page. Okay, so let's go to Home. Now we're logged in as a VIP user. Let me click Log Out. Now pay attention to the nav bar. Once I logged out, the 4th link, the VIP exclusive link, disappears. And now let me log in as a regular user. For example, John. Click Login. As you can see, a regular user can access all those blog posts, but cannot see the 4th link. And if I'm going to access the VIP exclusive link manually, we are not allowed. So as you can see, 404, page not found. So how does this work? Let's build it together. Let's go to VS Code. First, let me create a new Git branch from the previous branch. Git branch, view router, dynamic routing, git switch, view router, dynamic routing. All right. Note that we're now on branch view router dynamic routing. Let's start the project. npx JSON server db.json npm run dev. This is the index.js under the folder router. Recall that we defined the router configuration here. Look at the routes option. Right now, the router configuration file contains some basic routes, like main layout, home, blog posts, about, login, and not found. We call them static routes, since they're defined in this index.js file directly. But we know that some of the routes will be displayed in the navigation bar. So let's add another meta field to flag those that should appear in the nav bar. So for example, home appears in the nav bar. So let's add actually 2 more meta fields. The first one is called a title. Let's call it home, which is the text that appears here. The second one is a Boolean value. We call it is nav link. And of course, it's true. Let's do the same thing for blog posts and about. Title, blog posts, is nav link true. And then for about, title is about, is nav link is true. And you will see why we define these 2 meta fields soon. Okay, so now that you're familiar with the static routes, next let's define a dynamic route. So let's go to here, views, and create a new view. Let's call it VIP exclusive.view. And very simple. Let's put H1 here. Welcome VIP member. You have access to exclusive VIP content and benefits. And we can leave the script and style empty for now. Recall that this page is only accessible to VIP users. Next, we need to define the route to that page. Instead of defining it directly in index.js, let's define the dynamic route separately for clarity. So under router, let's create a file called dynamicroutes.js. And we can define dynamic routes here. Well, in this example, let's only define one. Export const VIP route. Recall that a route has several options. Path, and let's call this VIP-exclusive. And name is VIP exclusive. And for component, here we're using dynamic imports at views, and this is the one we just created. Next, let's define the meta field. Requires auth, of course. Title. And let's call this VIP exclusive is navlink true. Here, let's add another field called roles. And for now, only a user with the role VIP can access this route. As you can see here, I'm using an array of strings to store the user roles. All right, great. Next, let's go to the navigation component. As you can see right now, we hard-coded all the route links in the navigation component. Let's make them dynamic. So here, let me delete all of those. Save. And as you can see, all the links are gone. Okay, so let's get rid of this function. Go to About. In the script, let's first load all the navigable routes from the router. Router.getRoutes. This function returns all the routes that are registered with the router. Right now, all of them are static routes. As you know, not all routes are navigable. As of right now, only 3 routes are navigable. So we need to find them in this array. So router.getRoutes.filter route route.meta.is nav link. Okay, so this filter will return us routes whose isNavLink is true. And we need to store them in a variable. Let's call it const navigable routes. All right, so now we have the navigable routes. Right now, there are only 3 routes: home, blog posts, and about. Next, let's dynamically render them as router links. So here, all right, thank you, Copilot. We do not need the active class. Router link v-4 route in navigable routes right here. Key is route.path, and make sure this is unique. And this is to, for example, /home, /blog posts, or /about. Here, using router.name is better. And here is the content of the router link. In this case, is the .title. That's why you can see here. home, blog posts, and about. Before we move further, let's quickly look at our fake authentication API, auth.js. This is where we simulate login and logout. As you can see, we use a variable to store the current user login status, and by default, it is false. And here is the logic for login and logout, and then we export the status, login function, and logout function. Besides, the login status is authenticated. In this demo, we need another important status, that is the current user role, which determines authorization or user permissions. So here, let's define another variable, const user role, and let's assume that every user only has one role. By default, it is empty. So it stores regular, means it is a regular user, or VIP. So in this small demo, there are only 2 user roles. Let's update our login function. And let me remind you again that this is just a fake login. So if the username is VIP user, and we don't really validate the password, we make is authenticated equal to true, and then set user role equal to VIP. So if this is true, assign VIP to user role.value. Otherwise, for example, if it's John or Tim or Tom, they are regular users. That's their user role. Okay. Then what about logout? That's simple. When a user logs out, we make is authenticated.value equal to false, and then user role.value equal to empty. All right. Finally, let's define a function to return the user role. And don't forget to export it, because other components is going to use the value that we stored in the user role. Okay, a quick summary. When a user logs in, we determine their role and store it in this user role reactive variable. And we can get its value from this getUserRole function. Okay, next, let's go ahead and update login logic to add the VIP exclusive route dynamically. All right, so this is the current login logic. So first, let's get the user role. Let's make sure we also import get user role from @APIs auth. So we'll get the role. And next, we're gonna dynamically add VIP route if the user is a VIP and route is not already added. So here, if user role is equal to VIP, make sure it's lowercase, and the router does not currently have a route with this name, recall the name of the dynamic route is called VIP exclusive. If these two are true, then add a route. Now, add a route takes 2 parameters. The first one is the name of the parent route. The second one is the route to be added. In our case, it is a VIP route. But we need to import it first. Import VIP route from, recall that we defined this route in a file under router dynamic routes. Make sure this is enclosed in curly braces. Okay. And the parent route of this VIP route is main layout. All right, let's test. So let's go to blog posts and click the first blog post. Let's log in as VIP user. Don't worry about the password. And let's log in. As you can see, we have a fourth link here. Great. Let's click it. Welcome, VIP member. You have access to exclusive VIP content and benefits. Great. All right, then let's press F12 here and take a look at View DevTools. And here you can see the router. As you can see, this dynamic route is added after we log in as a VIP user. Other routes were added when we first started the application. So those are the static routes, but this one is called the dynamic route. However, there is a small problem here. Let me show you. So now we logged in as a VIP member. How about implementing logging out? Let's add a logout button here in the home page. So after this paragraph, let's define a button and let's call this logout. At click, handle logout. All right. And we only want this logout button to appear when a user is logged in. So here let's use v-if is authenticated. Recall that our auth.js exported this ref value. So down here, let's import is authenticated and also log out from API's auth. Okay, then let's implement handle logout. All right, great. And recall that here is the definition of logout. Set is authenticated to false and empty user role. Okay. But actually, before we do that, we need to remove the VIP exclusive route from the router. So here, remove dynamically added routes, if any. Here, let's make it simple. If router dot has route VIP exclusive router dot remove route. But here we need to import use router and then define router here. Okay, so let's try it. I will show you the problem. Let's click logout. Remember that right now we logged in as a VIP user. So click logout. And as you can see, this button disappeared. That means we're no longer logged in. However, this VIP exclusive link is still there in the nav bar, right? It is a leftover link. If I click it, it's page not found. And when I go back, that link is gone. So what happened? Apparently, we explicitly removed the route when we logged out. But why that VIP exclusive link was still there after we logged out? Let's go to the navigation component. This is because router.getRoutes is not reactive. It's just a snapshot of the current state. So when we add a new route or remove an existing route, Vue doesn't notice and will not re-render the nav bar. At this moment, you may have this question, but I remember very clearly that, for example here, when we log in as a VIP user, the link is over there. It seems like router.getRoutes is reactive? Well, what happened behind the scene is, after logging in, View router navigates from the login page to the page we were previously on, that is, the blog post page. And that navigation causes the navigation bar to be mounted again. And at that moment, of course, router.getRoutes will get the latest routes, the routes with a VIP exclusive route. But that doesn't mean router.getRoutes is reactive. As you can see here, so if I click logout, the VIP exclusive link is still there because that action does not cause the nav bar to be reloaded or remounted. So how do we solve this problem? There is a simple answer. What if we can make the routes reactive? Let me show you how I achieve this. Let's create a simple reactive store for navigation links or nav links. So right-click SRC. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it stores. And under stores, new file, let's call this navstore.js. We're going to put reactive routes in this nav store. So const nav routes ref brackets. Initially, the nav routes is empty. And here I'm going to do export function use nav store. So basically, I'm defining a function and also exporting this function. Router, use router. So that means here we need to first import ref and then import use router. Okay. Next, I'm going to define a function in this function, and let's call this const update nav routes. It's very simple. First, let's get all routes from router.getRoutes, and then let's only pick navigable routes. All routes.filter route.meta is nav link. Okay. So here stores all navigable routes. And here is how we update the navigable routes. Okay. In the end, this function will return two things: the nav routes and this function, update nav routes. We're going to use this function in the navigation. So let's go back here. And this time, we can safely delete all of them because we're not going to use router.getRoutes. Instead, let's import use navstore from stores navstore. Okay. And then let's extract the nav routes from this function. Recall that if you call this function use navstore, it returns two things. And in the navigation.view, we're only interested in this ref variable. So let's copy this and paste it here. All right, good. Well, here's another problem. Let's refresh. This is empty. Why? This is not surprising because initially this guy here is empty. And this is easy to solve. Let's have a auto run once. So here, if nav routes is empty, then call update nav routes. All right, so let's refresh. All right, then we have those, right? Good. Then let's go to login. and update the login logic. All right, right here. After adding a new route to the router, we need to update the nav routes in our nav store. So update nav routes. But before that, let's import use nav store from stores nav store. Okay, and then down here, let's unpack and get the update nav routes function. Then we can use it here. All right, so here let me put a comment. Update the navigation bar. Well, actually it should be update navigation store to reflect new routes. Well, in this case, there's only one new route added. Okay, recall that this line itself would not trigger the re-rendering of the nav bar. That's why we add line 45. Because in line 45, the nav routes is reactive. Right here. So if this one changes, nav bar will re-render all the links in the nav bar. All right, then let's also go to home. After removing routes, let's do the same thing. Update nav routes. Import use nav store. Let's test. Let's go to blog posts. Log in as VIP user. This is good. Then let's go to home and log out. All right, that link is gone thanks to our nav store. Let's go to navstore.js. I want to talk about what's going on there. So if you look at this navstore.js, what I did here is first I defined a reactive variable, nav routes, and then a function, export function use navstore. In Vue.js, this function use navstore is called a composable. It's a fancy name. A composable is just a reusable function that uses Vue's reactivity system. Like ref, reactive, computed, watch, and etc. A composable composes logic that can be shared across components. Hence the name composable. In this simple demo, the way to store nav links using a simple JS file or something called composable is enough. Later, we will learn a more professional way of managing states in Vue applications. We'll use something called Pinia. Well, our hand-rolled state management or nav link management solution will suffice in this simple scenario. There are many more things to consider in large-scale production applications. So later, we'll refactor this, basically converting this navstore.js into a Pinia store, a professional state management solution. But again, here, this is enough. In the end, let's make our application more robust. Let's go to index.js in router. Right now, the global before each navigation guard only checks authentication. We also need to prevent unauthorized access to role-restricted routes, like in our case, only VIP users can access the VIP exclusive route, right? Let's make this more robust by also verifying the user role. So const user role get user role. Good. But here, let's make it home. So here we get the user role. If the destination.meta.roles exist, in other words, if the destination route or page requires roles and the current user's roles is not one of them. We're going to redirect you back to the home page. Make sure you also import get user role here from API's auth. Check role-based access. And that's it. Next, let me push the branch to GitHub. Dynamic routing and navigation bar updates based on user roles. Click push. In this video, we learned how to implement dynamic routing in Vue Router by adding routes based on user roles, updating the navigation bar reactively, and securing access with global navigation guards. We also created a simple reactive store to manage nav links. This approach helps you build flexible, role-aware navigation in Vue applications, perfect for dashboards, membership sites, and any role-based content system. All right, see you in the next video.